Survivalists, nomads, and excellent parents, the Tortles are the turtle folk of the D&D multiverse, perhaps quite obviously. Each one is born an adventurer, as each turtle has a built-in need to explore and reach the horizon, albeit a little slowly. These lovable reptiles got their own expansion, the Tortle Package, and a solid amount of exposure on Critical Role with a fan-favorite NPC, Orly. Playing a Tortle is not as straightforward as you would expect, so we're going to go over everything you need to know about them in today's episode. Tortles believe that they carry their homes on their backs, and that's largely due to their upbringing. Tortles are raised and protected for only about a year before their parents die of old age, unfortunately. They learn to survive in the harsh wilderness while extremely young, brought up to be explorers from the very start. Then once they are near the end of their lives, they seek out mates to raise a new generation and start the cycle over again. It's in this final stage that they finally settle down, building impressive fortifications to protect their young. It's for this reason that there aren't many Tortle towns to speak of. They're fully capable of building permanent residences, but you can see that they have no need for it. Not until their twilight years, at least. The Tortle communities that do exist are more like moots or simple meeting places. Places where Tortles can converge to share stories of far-off lands and skills obtained from experience. Each Tortle saves up new experiences and stories from far-off lands and places and tries to share them as much as possible. Beyond wanderlust, Tortles are usually pleasant and non-obtrusive. They respect the opinions and territories of others and will usually opt to wander elsewhere if unwanted. They have no gods, no religion of their own, but they have a curious affinity for the sun and the moon, which they believe to be the eyes of the day and night that watch over them in their adventures. You'll probably notice that Tortles you're with will get uneasy or uncomfortable when they're underground or anywhere else that they cannot be seen by these celestial guardians. Tortles don't really have much in the way of a description besides looks like a turtle. We do have some pieces of official artwork though, and it seems that like a turtle includes all sorts of turtles and tortoises. Don't think of this as a lack of description, as opposed to a blank slate where you can really just design your character however you want. I highly encourage you to look up some images of real-world turtles and tortoises, as you'll be surprised at how much variation exists with these titans of evolution. Tortles have single non-gendered short names without any family or clan names to speak of. They also frequently change their names, so even mid-adventure you can feel free to swap it out for something else. We'll throw up some examples on screen, of course, to give you a good idea of where to start. For your first name, at least. Starting off with your ability score increase, your strength score increases by 2 and your wisdom score increases by 1. It's an ideal spread for clerics, monks, and strength-based rangers who can take advantage of the wisdom boost. Or you can just prioritize the strength and build an excellent barbarian or fighter. As for age, young Tortles crawl for a few weeks after birth before learning how to walk on 2 legs. They reach adulthood around the age of 15 and live an average of 50 years. Rather short considering the almost mythical longevity in real-world tortoises. Not stiflingly short, but you can't really do the whole ancient mystic turtle trope, which is a little disappointing. Tortles tend to lead orderly, ritualistic lives. They develop customs and routines, becoming more set in their ways as they age. Most are lawful good, and a few can be selfish and greedy, tending toward evil, but it's unusual for a Tortle to favor chaos in general. As for their size, Tortle adults stand 5 to 6 feet tall and average 450 pounds. Their shells account for roughly 1/3 of their entire weight, and your size is medium, of course it is, but you're on the chunky side of medium, so bear that in mind for role-playing purposes, as your weight might cause something that's not exactly structurally sound to give way. As for their speed, they have a base walking speed of 30 feet. I'm sure you were expecting me to say something slower there. You do, of course, have claws as a natural weapon, which means you can do unarmed strikes, but I would say that like most natural weapons, these really aren't that great unless you're caught without your real weapon or you're in a pinch. You're also able to hold your breath up to 1 hour at a time. Tortles aren't really natural swimmers, but they can remain underwater for some time before needing to come up for air. An hour of held breath can be a literal lifesaver. It's obviously situational, and if you get knocked overboard, you'll be thankful to have it. It's important to note the difference between breath holding and water breathing, though. Water breathing allows for casting and verbal components because you can still talk, but does nothing in other hazardous conditions. It's water breathing, not poison cloud breathing, after all. Hold breath doesn't allow for verbal spellcasting because you're not able to talk, but you can definitely hold your breath in other hazardous conditions. Perhaps one of the more obvious ones is your natural armor. Due to your shell and the shape of your body, you are ill-suited to wearing armor in general. Your shell provides ample protection, however, it gives you a base AC of 17. Your dexterity modifier doesn't affect this number. You gain no benefit from wearing armor, but if you are using a shield, you can apply the shield's bonus as normal. This, to me, is clearly what you're picking the race for, as a flat AC of 17 is pretty fantastic. Especially if you throw a shield on there in order to get an AC of 19, you're going to be able to shrug off an awful lot. Leading from that is shell defense. You can withdraw into your shell as an action. This one is flavorful and it seems so useful, but I'm sorry to say that it's pretty bad. Like, astonishingly bad. With a shield in your shell, you should be looking at a 23 AC in exchange for basically skipping your turn, which doesn't sound too terrible. The problem is that the math doesn't really line up when you actually put it to the test, and the situations where it would be actually useful are slim. Part of using this ability makes you prone, which means melee attacks against you are suddenly going to have advantage on every single attack against you. Much smarter men than I have done the number crunching, and in melee you're actually more likely to be hit by most attacks in your shell than without. There are some hypothetical situations. For instance, if you see a bunch of archers in the distance and they're all taking aim at you, you can probably see how this would be a good fit, but even in those situations, it's probably a better option for you to dodge. I really wish this worked better, and I hope they fix it at some point, but until then, you're better off ignoring this ability entirely. Another common trait is survival instinct, meaning that you gain proficiency in the survival skills since Tortles have finely honed survival instincts. A bonus skill proficiency is always nice, and survival is one of the best ones. And finally, as for the languages that you can speak, read, and write in, that is limited to Aquan and Common. The inclusion of Aquan here is especially strange to me, given that they didn't give Tortles a swim speed. Aquan is very unlikely to come up in your game, so I tend to value it quite lowly. But languages are always situationally useful, or sometimes situationally useful, I guess. Tortles with their massive natural armor can take just about any class you can imagine and turn them into a much more survivable version. 5e is a great system and you can really make whatever you'd like, but if you're interested in optimization, we definitely have some ideas for you. Starting with the Turtle Power Barbarian. A +2 to strength already sounds pretty good for a barbarian, but the Tortle shines here because it allows you to min-max. With a flat 17 for your AC, you can turn dexterity into another dump stat and just max out strength and constitution. I particularly like the Path of the Storm Herald for this, not only because I like shooting lightning, and I really like shooting lightning, but because its abilities are all based on constitution, which should be very high for you. And then we have the Mushroom Tortoise. The Tortle's base 17 AC is something you should really take advantage of if you're playing a class that normally has to work for it. Try rolling up a Tortle Druid to take advantage of that AC along with the Strength and Wisdom boost. I particularly like the Circle of Spores here, because their Halo of Spores and Symbiotic Entity abilities really encourage you to get into combat, and the free 17 AC allows you to dump Dexterity in favor of high Wisdom and Strength. Strangely enough, I have found that most of my friends who have made it to their 20s without playing D&D are often intrigued by being able to play something like a Tortle. I think it's because it rides the gap between full-on fantasy and childlike imagination. I mean, a turtle person that can tank hits and handle themselves in a fight? That's something that just kind of stays cool from childhood to adulthood. Thankfully, when you roll one up, they're surprisingly just as fun as one would hope they'd be, with a few concessions based on your preconceived notions of a turtle or tortoise. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe because we put out new content like this every week. And if you or someone you know is rolling up a Tortle character, I would really love to hear about it down in the comments. My personal favorite Tortle character I've ever encountered was from a friend of mine who had never played anything even remotely similar to D&D, and of course named his turtle person Franklin. He was simple-minded and earnest, much like the show that name was based on. Thanks again for watching. My name's Patrick Ferguson with Skull Splitter Dice, and until next time, farewell.
Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss out.